morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. So I work in the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure at the National Science Foundation. This is a division within the Computer and Information Sciences and Engineering Directorate, or SISE. It's a basic computer sciences research directorate at NSF. I've got my colleague, Amy Apon, with me. And in fact, Amy is the lead program director of this program that maybe some of you heard about for the first time yesterday with the CC Star term, wondering what that is. That is our campus cyber infrastructure program. And I've got just a little bit of material here that's really in the context of how we talk about OS Pool and OSDF in the program and in the solicitation. So this program started back in 2012. It was frankly, I think, a real departure for OAC in the type of program, what we were going after for funding. It was originally a campus networking program only. It was all about upgrading campus connections. It harkened back to a program that maybe one or two of you might recall if you were around then at NSF, going all the way back to the 90s, called the High Performance Network Connections Program. And so we spent the first several years plus in the program, actually it's more than that, probably the first 6 years, funding nothing but infrastructure upgrades on campus networks externally. At the border, you see a diagram that's kind of unreadable there, but that's the Science DMZ architecture that people talk about all the time. And over the years, we expanded it. We expanded it based on community feedback. Some of the proposals that we were starting to see, which were maybe a little less about networking and trying to stuff in a lot of compute and storage in that Science DMZ re-architecture at the border. So we got the message and we expanded it. But it has, over the last, what is it now, 14, 13 years or so, I think we're into year 13 of the program, amassed around 500 awards. I think we're over that. And I would say at least half of them probably over time have been in the networking side. So that's the kind of the origins of the program, and it expanded. And what it looks like today is kind of a multi-target opportunity for campus cyber infrastructure that spans networking, computing, storage. There's been a very popular planning category that's now called strategy. I think we've got at least one award in the room on that. And another way this program expanded was it went beyond the campus, like an atomic award to a single campus for a campus compute, campus network upgrade, and now storage to involve multiple under-resourced institutions. And so that's the region kind of subcategory. And so you actually have all sorts of types of proposals now to this program. Amy, I think, did a really nice job in leading kind of a streamlining of the solicitation. It's still a long read because there are so many opportunities in there. And the sizes of the awards have gone up. In fact, just this morning, I had to go back and look at one of the first solicitations over 10 years ago. Some of these award sizes maxed out at $400,000. So maybe we're trying to keep up with inflation. I'm going to key here on just the two areas of relevance, right, to OS Pool and OSDF and where they're mentioned. And they're mentioned in Area 2 in computing and Area 4 in data storage. And so these words are right out of the solicitation. We like to be exact with the words when we talk about a program. And both Amy and I have given much longer talks covering all of the areas. So I'm just going to key. I'm not going to go through all of the requirements here. I'll refer you to 24-530. You can Google that. You can read through all the guidance that we have for these areas. There are a lot of requirements, a lot of suggestions. These are challenging proposals to put together if you've never done one. If you've done one, you know that. But here we are with computing, where we have certainly made a lot of awards to large R1s over the years. We will still do that if they can make the case for a need of, in their case, probably augmenting some significant compute resources they already have. But we have words in there now that are very much pointed towards under-resourced institutions, and giving strong preference to those. And I think as a result, over time, we're seeing more interest, more proposals from the R2s, from the under-resourced smaller schools, which I think, as Frank will talk about in his next talk, present their own challenges for them, right, even in going after one of these awards. We talk about, we might reword this, Marone, but we talk about, I think those are words right out of 2430, the OSG Consortium, and an approach here that is incentivizing sharing across campuses of resources. We've got some 23 numbers in there for OSG, and we'll certainly update that in the FY25 solicitation. In there, we also talk about region awards. There's more money there. And here we're looking at a leadership entity, a leadership institution in a state or region proposing on behalf of a number of smaller, under-resourced institutions that, for different reasons, are not coming in with their own proposal. Sometimes don't have the resources to do that. Sometimes may not have the resources to execute on what they're proposing. And so we're seeing this level of sharing now that we're kind of incentivizing, right, with this region type of proposal. And so what we would expect to see in one of these proposals are science-driven needs mapped to what if they're asking us to fund a bunch of GPUs, we would expect to see science applications mapped to those GPUs. We see a lot of that with machine learning types of applications in these proposals and so forth, covering all of those smaller institutions that are identified in the proposal. So just putting one of these proposals together takes a hell of a lot of coordination and teamwork, and probably a hell of a lot of meetings between these institutions. And here is the sharing requirement. So this is unique, as far as I know, to this day at NSF. MRI doesn't have this. Now, by the way, I'll mention MRI for a second. That's a program that's NSF-wide that has quietly been funding campus compute clusters for, I think, pretty much as long as I've been there. I've been there a long time. And so if you're in this space, if you're sitting in here looking for funding opportunities, you should also look at MRI, but you're not going to find this requirement in that solicitation or anything else. And so what we put in there specifically is that you have to share 20% of those cycles. We don't require how exactly you do that, but in reality, there are only a couple of ways to do that with a national shared distributed fabric, and we call out path. And in fact, I think our words are a little stronger in 24.530. I have to go back myself to see how we phrase this in previous solicitations. This has been actually a requirement and a funding opportunity, I think dating back to, I want to say 2019. So this has actually been around now for 5 years or so. Proposals are encouraged to include a letter of collaboration from the selected platform. Now, basically we see two types of proposals. Most will contact Marone's team here, and we'll see a letter from Marone. And the good proposals will lay out how they're exactly attaching to OS pool. There's more than one way to do that. I'll leave it to Marone's team to describe that. We point them in the solicitation to their website. I've got some pictures of their web pages here in a second. But just of note, because Frank's going to be talking about, I think, NRP and OSN following me, we also see proposals identifying NRP as an alternative, and that's fine. The majority of the awards we've made, probably the vast majority, come to path. Yeah, hard to read, but this is a very nice web page that the PATH project has up. I think it's one click off of the URL that we provide in the solicitation. And they lay out a red carpet here to get engaged with them and to have a discussion on how to work with PATH and how to share their resource in working with their proposal. So a lot of nice material in there. I'll skip this. This is kind of repetitive. We put this in our normal 24 5:30 talks. And I'm just going to go through and show you a few web pages. If you have not been on the PATH website, and Todd, I don't know what you're showing in repetition here or not, but I will tell you that we at NSF visit these web pages. Marone knows this because if something's broken, he hears from me on text. We will even go to some of these websites, web pages during our monthly calls. So I've got a few minutes left. Let me just go through this. Yeah, they give some nice summary numbers. They have a list of contributing institutions. We can track this. Hard to read. These are some of the larger institutions. There's a much longer list. So there's some summary numbers here, 67 institutions, 106 million plus jobs run. I think these are 12-month summary numbers. They're a little shy about showing the CPU hours on this one. That's okay. And then here's a drill down. Let me just ask a question. Raise your hand if you've heard of Franklin and Marshall College. Okay, keep your hand up if you know which state that institution is in. Now keep your hand up if you know which town it's in. Okay, it's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So this is a small liberal arts college. They contribute. And actually, these are some pretty impressive numbers. There are other small institutions on this list, but I think this is what it's all about, right? And so you get this drill down and you can see what they're contributing. They can see what they're contributing to in terms of projects and even institutions, some of these very large institutions. So just some fantastic stuff. All right, I'm kind of running out of time already. This is another web page you can go to off of the OS Pool material. We at NSF kind of do like these pie charts. My guess is they did it for us. This is kind of what we do in Exceedland. So pretty charts that show all sorts of sciences being supported. It's important. Okay, so in computing, we made these awards in the last solicitation. We're now in between due dates for 24, and we're actively paneling and reviewing proposals into the first deadline in 24. So I'm not going to talk about what we got in or what we're going to award in the current one. This is 23526. This is probably half of what's currently, roughly half of what we have as current active awards, both in campus and regional. I'll just point out one here. Let's see if it's on here. Is it Yes, Claflin University is on here. This is a great example. It's this HBCU in South Carolina. They're not hosting their cluster. They're in partnership with Clemson. So they got this award, but that is going to be hosted and run by Clemson. And you see a different set of institutions there. So we've got some nice diversity. Gotcha. Okay, so here is one example out of UTEP. This is, I think, GDX A100 based GPUs. We see a lot of proposals that are largely ML based. One of the larger HSIs in the country. They're going to be joining OSG. Marone, you should hear from them in the months ahead. Very quickly on data storage. The same kind of number, $700,000 for a data storage platform. New this year that Amy introduced was the regional area. We have not had that before. So we've got no regional storage awards going into 24. We should see some coming out of 24. Here we point to OSDF. There's another alternative that we've seen in the short couple of years we've had this opportunity, and that's OSN. Frank will talk about OSN. And here is the data storage awards from last year. That's the majority of the 18 that are currently active. We've got some folks from FIU in the room, so I decided I would show one of their awards. They've had multiple awards in CC Star over the years, proving that an institution can come back and hit different targets over time. I think this is a 5 petabyte data store. I think it's Lustre based. They're using Dataverse. And while it's largely geared towards the environmental sciences, it is multidisciplinary and campus-wide at FIU. Last slide. It's almost guaranteed we'll issue another solicitation. I mean, we can never promise those things with the fiscal year uncertainties. We are undecided right now on 1 or 2 deadlines. The last couple of years, we've had multiple deadlines. That's a lot more work for us, but I think it does pay off. We'll see. Computing and storage areas remain 2 of the more popular areas in the program. It's hard to imagine us not continuing these areas, given the response that we get. And we're going to remain committed to campus-level resource sharing. As always, we welcome feedback from the community. We get that in all sorts of forms, including events like this. So thanks for your time.
All right, we'll move on to the next speaker, but thanks again, Kevin. Are the lights good for everyone? Better? Projected? All right. So we're bringing back the man of many titles, Frank Wuerthwein, to talk a little bit about NRP.
So I actually changed the title and the focus and the message of the talk. And so is it still you? It's still me. But because I realized when I asked myself, what do I really want to talk about? That it's not about NRP. It's really about when the experience that I've had by talking to smaller institutions all across the country, but mostly actually in California where I reside. And it ultimately is about how can we reduce the total cost of ownership of participating in the CC Star program. And so let me start by the objective. The objective, when everything is said and done, my favorite presentation of the objective is from the Minds We Need. And I'll just read out the first part. Connect every community college, every minority serving institution, and every college and university, including all urban, rural, and tribal institutions, to a world-class and secure research and education infrastructure with particular attention to institutions that have been chronically underserved. And the first thing I want to point out here, it says research and education. So one of the lessons I have learned by dealing with or getting to know these lots of these smaller institutions is that it's a lot about education. The educational mission is typically at the forefront of their mind, and the research mission comes with it as a secondary concern. And so, and the reason why a lot of these smaller institutions are coming to programs like the CC Star and working with us is that research requires computing infrastructure, education requires computing infrastructure, not just research. If you look around, I see a revolution at my own institution that more and more courses that we teach across a wide range of discipline just require computing infrastructure and data infrastructure to even be taught. It's part of the curriculum to have homework assignments that are on the computer. And so the problem statement that I see is that OSG requires the institution to operate a batch cluster and or a storage cluster in order to join the OSG. And that, from my experience talking to smaller institutions all across is a very high bar to jump. I don't know whether it's many, I don't have statistics, but if you look at the, go to the Department of Education website and look at the accredited institutions of higher learning, they give you a nice map of the US, and there's close to 4,000 accredited higher institutions of higher learning. They may not have the staff to do so, to operate a cluster or operate a storage cluster or compute cluster. And there's sort of 3 reasons. 1, they can't afford it. 2, they can't recruit it because of the location where they're located. There's just no workforce that does this thing in their location. And 3, that it just doesn't make any sense to sustain that kind of workforce at the institution, given the size of the institution. It's disproportionate to the size of the institution to have 4 FTEs doing all the stuff that you have to do that SDC does for UCSD for the campus infrastructure. That just doesn't make any sense. And so I think a cardinal question to me is, can we reduce the total cost of ownership of compute and data infrastructure, and how do we do so? If we want to reach the thousands, that is a must do in my mind. And so I'm going to tell you about one for compute and one for data, how you can actually reduce the total cost of ownership. And a simple answer is you can outsource operations. If you can't afford operations, but you still want to own, well, you outsource operations. And for compute, the NRP allows you to outsource operations. The NSF funds the prototype NRP. And so what you see here is the stack, and there's two places where you can join into that stack and outsource operations to NRP staff. And you can either come in at the IPMI layer and have the NSF-funded PNRP project operate your hardware all the way up from IPMI. That means that you outsource the operations of the operating system, the patching of the operating system, and all that jazz. If your security stance at your campus allows it, voila, knock yourself out, outsource it. If that makes your security folks too uncomfortable, there's a second place you can join in at the Kubernetes layer. In other words, PNRP operates a Kubernetes cluster that is non-local. It covers the entire world, and you can operate all of the things, including the operating system, and then join above the operating system into the NRP Kubernetes infrastructure, and voila, that works just as well. That still requires you to maintain the patching of the operating system, but it may be more palatable to your campus security folks. Then on top of this, there is the usual compute element that the OSG has as a requirement. And it's a different kind of compute element. It sits on Kubernetes. It's not your hosted CE type thing that you hear most being talked about. And so we don't normally talk about how that works in detail, but it does exist, and it's an option. And then you can, from the CE, join into the OS pool with your resources, or into any other Condor pool. It doesn't matter. The structure is that you join a Condor pool at this layer. And so there is a significant amount, either one of these two, joining on either one of these two layers, there's a significant amount of total cost of ownership savings because you outsource operations to some extent. There's other things that you get for free in a way as you do this, because you join a community that has its own training, that has user training. Those you can avail yourself anyway to some extent. But if you are outsourcing operations, then you automatically are in the loop of when these events happen, There is a user support infrastructure that is something similar to Slack-based that your users can join. So there's all kinds of other cost of ownership reductions that you get for free, so to speak, as you do this. But invariably, it requires your campus cybersecurity folks to stretch their mind a little bit, to do something a little bit unusual. And so this is your ops effort may be as little as providing space, power, cooling, and networking, and deal with hardware failures. Those are the things that you always have to do yourself. The rest you can outsource.
Frank, I want to make a few comments here, because this is an extremely powerful picture that sends several messages. One is that the power of this, if you want to call it multi-headed monster, that is NRP, Pelican, and PASS, how all these pieces are basically working together to provide different solutions depending on the specific needs and interests of the campuses that are the focus of this. And the other one is the point that you made about the networking, that one of the advantages of joining, whether it's NRP or the OS pool, or as you can see here, you can do both, is that the campus start thinking about being part of the national infrastructure. That means rethinking the network. And the DMZ that started at the beginning of the CC Star program was another approach to how do I become part of the national structure. So this is, you know, this is the slide that people should take home from here.
Thank you. So now that works for compute. In principle, you could also do storage that way. And we agonized over this. I basically sat with the staff in my group that does this and agonized, are we willing to support storage CCSR grants in this way? And basically they told me no. And the reason is simple, we don't have the effort. Within the NRP team, there isn't enough effort to take on both the compute and the storage. And move over to, I wanted to show you the map of this is the map of institutions that are currently integrated. You can look at that at leisure. So what about storage? And there is no equivalent, at least not that I know, that is actually funded by the NSF as a storage solution that will allow you to outsource your storage operations. However, there is a project that allows you to do it and have you pay them to do it for you. And that's actually not a bad deal in my mind. And the thing, and let me be clear, I get no funding from OSN. I am not part of OSN. I do not have no conflicts of interest that I know of, at least. And so the Open Storage Network, it provides everything starting from a shopping list, what to buy. They literally think of themselves as a storage appliance opportunity. And so I'm told, I asked by email what the current status is before putting the slide together. For a little less than 100K, you can buy a pod, which you just follow their shopping list, that provides 2 petabytes of S3 right now. So out of, if you wanted to take the 700K of Kevin's and solicitation, you have, and you set aside 100K for ops and to get it all together, that would be 6 times 2, that's 12 petabytes of S3 that you can buy for this, according to the information I was given. Then in addition, they require, if you want them to operate this from remote, it's a very similar kind of story. Everything gets operated from remote. You buy the appliance, you put it into the rack, you hook it power up and you hook networking up, and they take over and do everything else. You outsource operations for $10,000 a year. You can then join your OSN and pod to OSDF. We established with Pelican, we established an S3 backend to OSDF. So at this point, you can actually join OSN pods into OSDF, and voila, you can do the sharing via OSDF. Same story as before, and it is morally equivalent to the compute slide that I showed a moment ago. I just don't have the nice stack picture. And this here is the current map. I took that from their website of pods that exist. And if you want to know more, they have a PDF on their website that discusses in gore detail what exactly you're getting into when you do this. And it has all kinds of information, like what's the rack size and all kinds of details that I can't possibly remember. And so I encourage people who are considering outsourcing, and there is a hitch. If you don't use their shopping list, they are not willing to operate for you. Basically, they made the decision that they want, in order for them to be able to do this at that price, they need to have control over what you have bought, because otherwise it is too costly to integrate and operate. So there's that as so you have to, if you want to outsource storage, you have to think early and plan ahead. Summary and conclusion, you can submit a C-star proposal for compute or storage, even if you don't have the workforce to operate a batch or storage infrastructure. That's the message of my talk. So you don't have to be investing into labor first before you can become a CC star owner and win an award. You can outsource compute system operations to NRP. You can outsource storage system operation to OSN. Whether or not you want to run your batch and storage infrastructure depends on what infrastructure you already have in place. There's very, very, very good reasons that you want to do it yourself. There's in no way, shape, or form am I implying that you should outsource. But I want to make sure that the possibility is there and people know that the possibility is there to outsource operations. And whether or not you want to outsource and what you want to outsource depends on your institution. It depends on what you want to do with this when you win a CC Star Award. It depends on what else you have already on your campus and how this falls in your total campus infrastructure plan. And I leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So this is actually a two-part talk. I'm going to start, and then Todd's going to talk about some stuff. So this is really things that we do as PATH and OSG for you, campus contributors. Just kind of thinking about why, where are we, what are we doing this for? We're helping campuses share compute and storage capacity with researchers, and this is, as Kevin emphasized, this is to reduce barriers to discovery for all of science. And as Frank mentioned, we're trying to help all the campuses. So if you go back to the Minds We Need thing, small campuses, large campuses, medium campuses, teaching campuses, research campuses, whether you got a CC Star Award, an MRI award, if you're a minority serving institution, whatever your classification scheme, we don't really care. We want to work with you. So as I mentioned, this comes in two parts. I want to emphasize, though, that tomorrow morning, there's what's called the CC Star track on the program. That's really open to everyone. It's not limited to CC Star folks. And we're going to talk a lot more about and have a much more interactive discussion about all of the stuff that I'm talking about now, and including the dashboard that Todd's going to talk about. Okay, so just before I dive into slides, show of hands, how many people are here representing a campus that is contributing or thinking about contributing capacity to either the OS pool or the OSDF or something like that? Okay, great. Cool. I couldn't see all the hands online, but I'm hoping there's some there too. Okay, so if you are just getting started in this process, you think you want to be part of this national or at least a regional infrastructure, basically we are here to help you get started with that process. And so for proposals, and again, I want to make it nice and orange. Please remember that the next CC Star deadline is mid-October. It is not too early to start. You go home after this week, and if you're interested, start working on this right away, because it does take a while. And Kevin said, you have to be able to describe how it is that you are going to do this sharing process. And so we can help prepare you for that. We're not going to write it for you, but we can help you know what you need to know so that you can write that and do a good job with that. And also, we will provide that letter of collaboration that Kevin mentioned. In general, though, we can help with things like planning a new cluster, expanding a cluster, whether that's CC Star or otherwise. We can help just with the planning part as the strategy program area now in CC Star. We can get down into the weeds of what this process looks like. And even to the extent that we can offer some advice on hardware and software configurations that work well with us. So once you're ready to contribute, we can meet to actually discuss what your goals are and then make a plan for how that's going to work. This is just a short meeting, I think. Then we work with you together to actually do the integration. We don't just sort of leave you off on your own to figure this out. And really our goal, one of our goals, is to try to minimize your effort in getting set up with this. We don't want to make this yet another burden on your time. One of the ways that we do so is by offering to host some of the key services that sort of are the interface. So on the compute side, that's the CE, the compute entry point, and on the storage side, that's the origin. We have documentation, of course, and we'll support you throughout this process. I did want to note that I am the OSG campus coordinator, and if for whatever reason you're not getting help through the normal channels, you can always reach out to me, and my email address comes a little bit later. Okay, and once you are contributing, we're there with you through the whole process, right? So we do our own monitoring. We'll maybe have some suggestions for you of what kind of monitoring to do locally in your campus. We help with accounting, so you can see what you're contributing and who that's going to, and that's really going to be the focus of Todd's section or part next. We continue to communicate with you, with the whole community. This was the theme of Christina's talk yesterday morning, and of course, ongoing support. And I just want to put, this slide is not about if you're contributing. I want to be very clear about that, but just a reminder that if you have researchers on your campus who could make use of the services we offer, so the OS pool, OSDF, that kind of thing, please point them in the direction of our research facilitation team and get them started today, right? You don't have to be a contributor. This is the really, really important part here I want to stress. You do not need to be a contributor to have folks on your campus to start benefiting from these services that we already offer. So get them started as soon as you identify them. And I don't need to walk through all this because Christina, I think, kind of already talked about this stuff. Okay, and then generally speaking, how can we improve these services? Please, as a community, as individuals, come and tell us what you think we could do better. Some suggestions here on ways that you could do that. We're all here, so reach out to us now while we're here in Madison. And again, I want to plug the CC Star track, which is, again, open to all tomorrow morning. There's my email address if you want to reach out to me directly. We have, during the school year more, we have weekly campus meetups. That's a chance to just come and talk with us and with each other. And you can see the details are at that link. And then there's our general support email address. Okay, I just want to give 3 quick examples of campuses that I've worked with in the past year who've had some, I think, interesting interactions with us. So I'm going to start with the University of Montana. They integrated their compute cluster from CC Star last fall. And as part of this process, they learned, I think for the first time really, about HTC and how we can help researchers at scale. And we showed them one way, not the new one, but we showed them one way where they can see kind of who they're helping with their capacity. Then in the spring, they reached out to us because they were setting up, for the first time, they were setting up an event on campus for their own researchers to come and learn about research computing opportunities. So they wanted them to use this new cluster that they had, but because they learned about high throughput computing, they were also able to share with these researchers that there are other options beyond their campus borders available. And so they asked if we could help with that. They gave us generously an hour of their one-day schedule, and Rachel Lombardi, wherever she is, actually went to Missoula and helped with that. So researchers got kind of a mixed view or a balanced view of what was out there as options. And that was about 50 attendees, both in person and online. And we've already seen a couple possible count requests coming through to us just from that. So that's great. Great Plains Network, I noticed that on the list of top contributors from the year that they were, I think, the number 5. So their older award was a CC Star Compute in 2020, but really that ended up being a regional computing system with nodes at 15 different institutions, and all of those were then contributing to the OS pool. And this influenced the CC Star program and in particular the development of the regional computing program area. It also, and I think this kind of goes on with this discussion that was just happening, it also led some of the contributing institutions to look at the systems that they already had on their campuses and say, hey, we could share some more. And they did this outside of any CC Star program requirement or anything like that. They just saw the benefit of doing that and added more. More recently, they had a press release this spring about their GP engine, which is the follow-on project to GP Argo, noting that so some of the institutions of GPN had contributed significantly to the NRAO, which we heard about yesterday. And so we're following on one of NRAO's press releases. So again, they're seeing the value of contributing to these national scale research projects, and your campus could be doing that too. Michigan State, I worried about putting this, I talked to Tom at Michigan State, he's cool with this, but it's not, I don't want to give the impression that everything is perfect and smooth and wonderful and sunshine and bunnies. So they did their integration in December, and it was not super smooth at first. So one of the requirements that we have is that worker nodes have outbound network connectivity. And so we actually started the integration process and very quickly discovered that even though they thought they had outbound network connectivity, it wasn't there and it wasn't working. And they actually ultimately discovered a bug in their software-defined networking that prevented that. So they had to do some changes to their network to allow this. Now this helps their own cluster, but it makes possible the integration. Got them up and running, that was great. Then the holidays happened and I was kind of checking on things and I noticed that while they were contributing plenty, we weren't using it very well. Now this is our problem. So if you're contributing capacity, then it becomes our job to make sure that we're using that. We're getting researchers to use that. And so that's why I was checking and I noticed it wasn't going well. And it turned out that our detection of the singularity or aptainer system wasn't working quite right. So the researcher payloads that needed it couldn't match there, couldn't run there. And so they were seeing far fewer payloads than they ought to. So between us and them, we debugged this for a little while and we got it working. So you can see some numbers there. They were maybe doing about 60 jobs per day prior and about 170 jobs per day after. So it really did make a change. And utilization, once it improved, then campus staff were like, hey, great, this is all working. Let's go ahead and scale up the contributions. And then there were sunshine and bunnies. Okay, so why contribute capacity? I think that the big one is the one that I highlighted with GPN here is, you can be part of something much bigger than just your own campus. You can contribute to these big projects and a whole list of them there and really contribute to great research that's going on. By learning a little bit about HTC and how it works, you are in a better position then to advise your own researchers on when it might be appropriate for them to use high throughput computing and how to get access to it, i.e. the OS pool. Generally, you're connecting with the national community of people who are doing this stuff. We're all in academia. We're maybe unlike industry, we have no real deep competition with each other. We tend to be sort of more all in this together. So by sharing information, you can help other campuses or other campuses can help you improve your own local offerings, period. Maybe slightly less exciting, but I have heard people say that this is important. You can get more use out of the capacity that you have. So if you've purchased a fair amount of capacity, thinking about the peak of your needs, you're not maybe always using that. It's kind of embarrassing to go to your, campus leadership and say, wow, we're using 40% of our capacity. You can use us to use the rest. We're happy to fill that role. And of course, you can do this to fulfill a promise that you made in a grant proposal. Okay, those are my thoughts. Todd is going to come up and start the technical transition here. I can probably take a question or so, just long enough to get Todd going, and then both of us will take questions at the end. Okay, if you think of anything, we can answer questions at the end. And of course, again, there's the Wednesday sessions tomorrow. There it is. Yay.
What's laser?
Yeah, I guess you can use the laser, but you gotta turn it on. Well, that.
All right.
Oh, he's gonna use the laser. Yeah.
Okay, good morning. So part two here, I am going to talk about the HD Condor CE dashboard. Don't worry, you will learn as we go what I am talking about. So you just heard Tim talk about why you should contribute, a campus should contribute capacity. But beyond the why, what about the who? So, you know, if I contribute capacity from my campus, Uncle Todd's College, who's benefiting from it, right? What science am I helping? Furthermore, how effectively is my contribution being used? You know, at Uncle Todd's College, if I contribute 500 CPUs every day, or is only one CPU being used, or two CPUs, or all 500 being used? And the answer here, the Zoom keeps popping stuff up, is the HT Condor CE for my campus knows all this information. And if only there was a web page I could look at that would and tell me about what the CE knows and communicate it to me. So before we get into the web page, how many of you, by show of hands, know what an HT Condor CE is? Very good. How many have no idea? Don't be shy. There's a few. Okay. So in 60 seconds or less, because I like technical stuff, I'm going to talk about a CE, but I'm not going to spend more than 60 seconds or Marone is probably going to yell at me. So say I have a contributing, there's a contributing campus, Uncle Todd's College, and I happen to have a Slurm cluster there. There's probably a Slurm front end sitting in front of that cluster. And this is where people, when SSH service runs and my users at the college would SSH into my front end and submit jobs to run on my cluster. Well, there is also a service called the HT Condor CE. And instead of users SSHing to it, organizations from the OSG consortium that want capacity, such as the OS pool and others, would come to the CE, request capacity from your Slurm cluster, and the CE passes that, delegates that request along to Slurm, and Slurm eventually decides to run jobs, and the capacity is then donated. Now, as Tim mentioned, many of you don't worry about running a CE on your campus because OSG campus services will happily host that for you in the cloud. So they're hosting it in their Kubernetes cloud, their whatever. And then all that you see at your campus is the CE doesn't SSH into your front end, just like a user would, talks to Slurm or maybe Condor, PBS, whatever, and gets capacity that way. So as part of the HT Condor CE activity, we changed the CE not just to get the requested capacity from your scheduler, Slurm, but also to monitor those contributed resources once they start running, and then store metrics about what happens, and monitor the health of the CE itself. Is the CE running? Can it not SSH into the front end? Is Slurm dead? Is Condor dead? That doesn't happen, but and then we created a lightweight web page to show what's happening. And we wanted to keep it lightweight because just like when you point your browser at your Linksys router at home, you don't want to have Grafana and Graphite and all this lots of dependencies sitting on your router. We wanted something small and simple in JavaScript. So this is what the overview page of the dashboard looks like. And the graphs at the top talk about, is your contributed capacity being utilized well? So for instance, up here, we have CPUs contributed in the past week. That's the red line here. And then the blue represents CPUs that actually get allocated to a science project. So you can see here, I might be like, I'm donating, you know, 550 CPUs, but there's only 300 CPUs actually allocated to a project. That doesn't seem like very effective use to me. What's going on is there's more than just CPUs involved. There's also memory and there's also disk space, right? So imagine Uncle Todd's College contributes a machine that has 256 cores, but only has 2 gigs of RAM, right? Odds are a lot of those cores are going to sit around pretty idle, right? And you're going to see something like this. So we came up with this notion of a basic computing unit, or a BCU. And this is basically 1 core, 4 gigs, and 4 gigs of RAM and 4 gigs of disk. And if you look at the basic computing unit, you can see, oh, it's actually doing much better than it seems over here. And this is probably because of, the example I gave, machines that have more CPUs than they have memory or disk. So then moving down on the overview, we get into who am I helping? So here we have a graph of the number of projects, the number of organizations or campuses, and the number of fields of science per day that we helped out. And then we get into the big pie graph that Kevin likes of what are these projects, and we list them all out. But if I have a little bit of time, we can go to a live demo because I'm a glutton for punishment. That's still PowerPoint. All right. I don't know, it shows up here.
Todd, why'd you break it?
It's showing up on this screen.
It's just...
Oh,
No, that was switching to the podium PC. Well, I guess we could.
yeah, why don't we do that? I mean, let's just get something going.
Yeah, here. Not ideal, but.
Well, that is crazy. Should I just unplug it and plug it back in again and see?
We're just showing them doing that.
Okay.
There might be something.
Okay. So it happens to be a list of all the hosted CEs and their health. So I mentioned we do health monitoring. Good, obviously everything's hunky-dory. Fair is maybe, it's still working, but maybe it's a little overloaded or something's going on. Poor is something is dead. And we show in here, a description of each one. If we sort by health, there's even the scheduler that the campus is using. And I would like to point out all the Condor scheduler ones, none of them are in poor health. They're all good or better. But if we look at some other schedulers, we have a few poor health, and as Greg Thane's mother would say, well, of course Condor's working fine. Okay. So we can scroll down some of these facilities. Some are small colleges, some are big. Rhodes College. Anybody know where Rhodes College resides? I think it's Tennessee somewhere. So why don't we click on their CE? And here we have their dashboard. Right at this moment, they are serving 3 science projects from 3 different organizations. It looks like they're kind of CPU bound. And of course, it has all the usual mouse over stuff that you'd expect. And it looks like in the past week, they have served 16 different projects.
Todd, can you go back to the top one? What is also important is to see that the contributing goes down and then comes back up, right? On July 7, it went down to 0 and then came up again. That shows the autonomy of the campus in deciding how much of their capacity to allocate to the OS pool.
Right.
So it's not a straight line.
Yep, their local users may have been using all their capacity. people can come in and say, well, okay, we've got, what's this project about? Or this plant biology thing. And you can click on it and it takes you pretty much to the same screen that Kevin was showing before. And you can read all about what this project is about, who's the PI, what field of science they're in, so on and so forth. But of course, I want to go to Wisconsin. One last piece I wanna show is when you go on a graph, you have this little full screen or edit or download data. So if you click on download data, you get a spreadsheet of all the data in the graph back, so you can do whatever you want with it. If you click on full screen, hopefully you get a full screen shot of that graph that's useful for kiosks. Maybe you want to advertise how much your, Uncle Todd's College, maybe we'll put in the Union a kiosk showing how much we're helping. And you can also click on this edit and change the graph around. And again, this is all just at your browser. There's nothing stored in the back end. So I am going to change the title of this and say groups served per day by Uncle Todd. All right, very good. This is a column chart. Maybe I'll try a bar chart. And you can click on this syntax reference here, and there's all kinds of ways you can slice and dice and graph the data. But I'm going to switch it to a bar. Ooh, that doesn't look very good. It's kind of patriotic, almost July 4th-y, but I think we'll go back to a column. Oh. And sorry about that. Okay. And then there's this button, copy HTML for this graph to the clipboard. I'm going to do that. Click. And now, for the first time since before Cole has been born, we are going to modify Uncle Todd's homepage. Literally untouched since the 90s, and just for you, I'm gonna change it. So here it is. But say this is, my department page. This is the HTML for said web page. I don't know if anybody can read that. Index.html. Look at my handcrafted HTML from the 90s. But all I'm going to do is insert and then paste from what the dashboard, the mess of junk it spat out. We'll save that. We'll reload this page. And look at that. There is group served by Uncle Todd right in his page. But seriously, you could put whatever graphs you want about how you're contributing to science in on your department page, your campus page, your college page, and not only to feel good about your contribution, but hopefully to inspire other groups on your campus saying, wait a minute, these science projects are getting how many resources? How do I get some of that, right? So with that, I'm done.
Thank you. And next up, we have Russell Hoffman, who's a CI facilitator with the Minority Serving Cyber Infrastructure Consortium, and he'll be talking about their planning community of practice.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Russell Hoffman. I'm with the Minority Serving Cyber Infrastructure Consortium, or the MSCC, which we typically call it. And actually, this talk was originally a 5-minute lightning talk, so don't worry, I can go quick, although I've added more context for background, particularly around the MSCC. So if you're not aware, the Minority Serving Cyber Infrastructure Consortium is a consortium started by a group of HBCUs and TCUs to work on developing cyber infrastructure on their campuses. We're a community organization which has a lot of community programming. We have monthly all-hands meetings. We have reoccurring communities of practice in cybersecurity and cyber infrastructure planning, which is what I'll be talking about today. In addition, we do a lot of regional workshops, working on developing partnerships between HBCUs and TCUs within a given region, as well as with their larger R1, R2, and REN partners. So the MSCC started back in 2018. It wasn't called the MSCC back then. It had a very nerdy acronym that no one has told me what it was. But I actually worked for Internet2. The MSCC partnered with Internet2 in 2021 to go for a Pilot Center of Excellence Award, which has been funding most of our community activities so far. And as you can see, after we got our award from 22 onward, we've had a lot going on. A lot of community workshops, community trainings, and student engagement activities. One thing I haven't updated this yet is last June, we did a training with Salish Kootenai College around data science using Jupyter Hub set up by folks here at UW-Madison. And this CI planning community of practice we began in 2022 or 2023. So we have a little bit over a year's worth of content put together now. The MSCC is a participant organization, which means anyone can join. There's no fee associated with it. You'll get on our mailing list, hear about our community programming that's happening. At the moment, we have 71 HBCUs, which is a little less than 70% of the total HBCUs in the country. 11 TCUs, which is a little less than 30% of the total TCUs. And then, as you'll see, we have a lot of affiliate institutions, which I imagine many of the folks here belong to what would be an affiliate institution, and we welcome you to join us and join our calls. One thing we always want from the community is more experience from people who have implemented cyber infrastructure on their campus, who are willing to talk and share their experiences with potential PIs, IT directors, and faculty at MSI campuses. So if you want to join the MSCC, it's just mscc.org/join. Anyone is welcome. You can participate in any of our calls, and if we have a regional workshop in your area, we might reach out to you to see if you want to come and talk. All right, so the MSCC CI Planning Community of Practice was originally started as a continuation of a virtual webinar series that we had done, the Cyber Infrastructure 101 series. The goal of this community of practice is really to share experience and knowledge around planning cyber infrastructure development on campuses, both as an overall strategic look at developing cyber infrastructure, but also, and very importantly, around developing CI plans to go for CC Star proposals, particularly in networking and computing. So as I said, we started back in 2023. We've had a meeting just about every month since then. You'll see we've actually begun to repeat some of our topics. The one we're doing next month is going to be a deep dive on networking components of pre-Science DMZ and pre-REN campus CI plans. My slides got a little messed up. But the reason we're doing this one is a lot of PIs have talked to me and kind of talked themselves down from going for a CC Star award because they'll say, well, we don't even have the REN connection to our campus. We have a strong enterprise network on our campus, but we really don't have anything to support research, which really isn't a reason not to go for a network planning or a CC Star network proposal, because the whole point of that is to address needs in terms of research or academic networking. The other topic, and these change every meeting, our topics change. It's based on votes from the community on what they want to discuss next. What we haven't done much on, but we will be doing is kind of more strategic planning type activities and how to go about cross-campus engagements to develop a CI strategic plan for the institution. So in addition to having these CI plan COP meetings, we've actually developed quite a bit of community material for facilitating the development of CC Star proposals, as well as for facilitating development of CI plans. One resource we put together is a template for an NSF CI plan. And this isn't a template where you just go in and you fill out fields with information about your campus and you're done with the CI plan. It's much more of a conceptual template on what are the areas that you want to cover, who are the individuals that you might want to involve in order to have these discussions and describe your campus and your campus's future goals. We have a lot of QR codes, or at least I do, and links. All of these materials we're putting up on our website within the month, so it'll all be available there in terms of our community resources. We also have had guest presentations. As I said, it changes every month on what we're discussing. This one from Patrick Schmitz on how to understand and leverage influences as you build your campus CI plan. So this is much more focused on who are the different individuals on your campus who you should get input from for when developing a campus cyber infrastructure plan, from administrators down to students, and how to have those conversations and talk about developing the CI plan in a way that is appealing to their interests so that you can get good collaborations. And this is about a 34-minute video. Most of our CI plan, COP meetings aren't recorded. We do, chatting house rules. But when we have guest presenters, we will occasionally record. Another resource we developed a few months ago was talking about how to go about doing faculty engagement on your campus. A challenge that we see quite often, particularly with CIOs, is they don't know how to begin conversations with the science drivers on their campus. And that begins with identifying who on campus has computational needs that aren't currently being served. So this resource goes from identifying potential science drivers, how to go about outreach, and then also it provides scripts to guide those conversations that you're having with your science drivers in a way that gives you back information that you can use to build the technical details of a science driver table or incorporate in the project description of a proposal, or simply to inform the development of a CI strategic plan. As I was saying, our CI plan community of practice is every third Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern time. That's 1 p.m. local time. You do not have to be an MSI to join. And actually, the more diversity of voices we have participating in the conversation, I think the better we can serve our community. So I encourage you to join. Also, if you have CI plans to share that aren't part of the ESNet that you think someone would find useful, I would be happy to accept those to share with our community. Particularly ones that involve kind of developing fundamental technologies to support research and education on campus, as most of the campuses we work with have strong enterprise networks and not so much on the research side.